Good evening, everybody. How are you? This is Enrique, the founder director of Spanish United. Tonight we have a very special guest. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, my name is Sel Harris, and it's so good to be here with you, Enrique.
Yes, Seta had told me a lot about you, and I would love to get your feedback. As you know, I am a civil rights activist that is advocating for Hispanic people in the United States and also to combat and to address Hispanophobia, which is a very serious problem in our country, which a lot of people are not aware about, but slowly is becoming a recognized issue. One of the reasons why I brought you on the show because
And Ray, I was aware of that. We lived in Austin, Texas for 4 years, so I'm keenly aware of the real problem that is.
yes, and Texas, for being a majority Hispanic state, has a lot of Hispanophobia. You would be surprised.
Yeah.
And I would like to draw parallels and similarities between persecution of Hispanics and Muslims, because I feel that in America, Hispanics and Muslims are seen as public enemy number one. So I would like to draw like similarities between Hispanophobia and Islamophobia. So I would like to ask you a couple of questions as we go. As someone who is a Caucasian convert to Islam, since you became a follower of the Islamic faith, have you experienced any Islamophobia on your part or behalf of your family or people that you know?
No, I have not, and you'll know why, won't you?
Is because you don't fit the stereotype of what a Muslim is.
Because I because I'm white. That's correct. That's
Mm.
correct. Because I'm white. I grew up in Virginia. I'm not proud of the fact that I had ancestors that fought for the Confederate States of America. Um, all my ancestors that fought in the 3rd Virginia Cavalry, when they died, they had no citizenship, nor did they deserve having American citizenship. They bore arms against the United States. My family owned slaves. I am not proud of that. But I don't experience Islamophobic threats because I am white. In fact, that I've gotten anything from wow, that's interesting, to you are a disgrace to your race, your heritage, your Southern heritage, and your religion by birth. But they're the the small things. No, because I'm white, you know, I don't get that.
Hmm. Because I've spoken with many people that are Muslim that do fit the image of what a Muslim is, and a lot of them have empathized with what's going on with the Hispanic community. Community. It's like Hispanics have gone through so much discrimination and racism and Hispanophobia to the point that it's affecting all of us. And especially with the previous administration, I feel that the Hispanophobia that has always existed has become mainstream and the norm. And it's like Hispanics are seen as public enemy number one. I feel that both extremists, both on the left and the right, white extremists and black extremists, is like they refuse to acknowledge a Hispanic identity because they don't see Hispanics as being part of the American nation. And what's interesting is that Hispanics have been here probably even before the founding of the American colonies because parts of America were part of the Spanish Empire. So when those territories became independent, some became part of Mexico and, some were captured as the United States started to expand westward. But, Hispanics have always been here, it's like,
And
I
and and
just,
you're
yeah, go ahead. I'm
you're
sorry.
aware. You're aware of the fact that I want to keep going that, but that there are Hispanic sisters and brothers that live in Colorado that have been there for 500 years because parts of Colorado were originally part of Mexico, like you say.
Hmm.
And we have to, and I want to hear, but I want to talk a little bit about how I think a way of beginning the process of correcting what you're saying. But please go ahead. I just wanted to say that about the Colorado part that a lot of people don't know.
Right, not a problem. And it's like we're not seen as being part of the country. And what's interesting is that Hispanics, we are not monolithic. People have the misconception that Hispanics are one race, one religion. But Hispanics come in all colors. Hispanics are not a race; we are an ethnicity. We have different religions, even though the majority is Roman Catholic. You have Hispanics that are Jewish. You have Hispanics that are Muslim. You have Hispanics that are agnostic. Hispanics that are Buddhist. But the stereotype of Hispanic people is that they are Catholic and that they are brown. So it's like, you know, when people see Hispanics that don't fit the stereotype, it's like people do not see us as being part of the Hispanic people. So, it's kind of hard to categorize what Hispanic is. But I definitely feel that Hispanophobia has gotten a lot worse because of the whole issue of illegal immigration, job, work, employment, services. And as the Hispanic population continues to grow demographically, in many parts of the country, they're going to outnumber both white and black Americans. So it's like that also fuels part of the Hispanophobia that's in the country. And one of the parallels that I see with Muslims, not so much in the United States, but primarily like in Europe, is like they are seen kind of like in the same way as Hispanics in the United States,
Right.
that they don't assimilate, they don't want to be part of the country, and demographically they are growing. So that also fuels a lot of the Hispanophobia that you see in Europe. While here in America, even though Muslims are not a big minority, minority compared to Hispanics, but because of what happened with 9/11, people have become Islamophobic. Like prior to 9/11, a lot of people didn't even know what Islam was. It's like most people didn't even know Islam existed in America. So when 9/11 happened, it kind of exposed the concept of what Islam was, but I feel that it was in a negative way.
Well, I think that the um, the problem is the way history is taught in the United States. That's the problem. And I'm all for the teaching of critical race theory. I think you can expand that from just African American. You could expand to Hispanic, Muslim, anybody that's different. And I think that people need to understand too that it was not the vision. Now, the framers, when the U.S. Constitution was done, women still didn't vote. They haven't been voting for 100 years here yet.
Right.
And of course, West Africans were still enslaved, but they did not want just a bunch of white people to come to this new country. Jefferson wrote that a variety and diversity of peoples from all over the earth is desirable in the new republic. And here's the reason why. He said, because diversity creates tolerance. Now, Jefferson did not free his enslaved West Africans, and that's the big mystery. But the framers did, all revolutions have to be permanent. That's one thing the Cuban Revolution did very well. They have to be permanent. And you say, well, but you didn't have a rebellion in the United States. Yes, we did. We when I was at the University of St. Andrews, I found my Iranian students there. I found that they knew about the Declaration of Independence here felt like that when Jefferson's writing what King George III had done to the people that was wrong. Iranians said in our revolution, we thought that Mr. Jefferson was talking about the Shah, what the Shah had done wrong. But if we studied history, we would understand that the framers wanted a diversity of people, and they gave us a mechanism to get that. It's called the preamble. In order to form a more perfect union, we the people, it's up to us to make sure that that diversity, that vision has been realized. But in American history, you know, we get told myths like Africans stole Africans and sold them. Not true. No, and because to enslave a Muslim is the most horrendous thing that can be thought about. And the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, teaches that liberating manumission of a slave is one of the most desirable things a Muslim can do. No, the Royal Africa Company was a capitalist company that was looking to make money, and that's just what they did. And if Africans were commodities, they were stolen. They were stolen by the Royal Africa Company, which was the trading company. That is the truth. And that they were very educated people. Now, as far in terms of the Hispanic brothers and sisters, the United States has practiced many false flag activities. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Like the black legend, which is a
Well,
myth
the most famous one I learned when I was in Texas was, you know, the border of the Republic of Texas ended not at the Rio Grande, but the Nueces River, which is just south of San Antonio right now. So when Texas came into the Union, that's where the southern border ended. Not down where Laredo is, but just south of San Antonio. I didn't know this until I moved to Texas. And what happened was General, oh shoot, I can't remember his name. He was
Ulysses
from
Grant.
No, it was John Tyler, who was the only U.S. president who died not being a U.S. citizen, because he was president in the 1840s and 50s. He was in the Confederate Congress. He lost his citizenship, but that's not part of the story. But what John Tyler did was he sent a garrison down to Laredo, Mexico, which is Laredo, Texas today, to Laredo, Mexico, you know, right at the Rio Grande River, to start a fight. And when that happened, the army, it was called a false flag. They were there. They were in Mexican territory, and when they were attacked by Mexican troops, they took that as a reason to just take everything from the Nueces River all the way to the border. And you know what the Laredo Mexicans did? They didn't want to be in the United States. They actually dug up their family from the graves in Laredo, what is now Laredo, Texas, went across the Rio Grande River and built what? Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. That's true. That's a false flag, and the United States has done several of those things in its history. But after what happened in Texas, the United States soon got what is now Oklahoma, Arizona, New Mexico, part of Kansas, and part of Colorado. All that was part of Mexico.
And so was California.
California and Nevada too. You know, and overnight, at least a third of Mexico was gone and was now the Western Territories because of the false flag that happened in not the Republic of Texas, but the state of Texas, which had the same borders, you know, but it you know, the southern border was the Nueces River. But there are are plenty of stories about that. You mentioned the diversity of the Hispanic community, Enrique, and you're so right. The last time we went to Cuba, that was that short time after President Obama had opened up the U.S. Embassy in Havana. We flew American Airlines right into Jose Marti Airport in Havana. It was awesome. We saw the U.S. Embassy there. Cubans were so happy that we had relations again, and it all just ruined when Trump. But so you're right. I mean, the Hispanic community is very rich. It's very, very, very diverse, and a lot of white people don't understand the diversity of it, and they are our brothers and sisters, and having a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious republic here, that is what the framers wanted. All of them. That's what they wanted. They wanted the diversity, and they knew that there was still work to be done, but they wanted the diversity. We are not a European nation, and we are not unofficially a Christian nation. We are a multicultural. There is no American race. To be an American is to be committed as an equal to a set of ideals. And the religion we have is of religious freedom, or not to have a religion. That's American history. And that is what needs to be taught, so that we understand that was their vision. And the U.S. Constitution holds that together. Oh, my heavens. If I could, Enrique, in the fourth grade, everybody had Virginia history, right?
Right.
And we all believe that if you're a white Virginian, you are descended from pure blue-blooded people.
Mm.
That is not true. That is not true at all. Virginia was not created for religious freedom. It was created by the Virginia Company in London, which wanted to make money. That's what it was. At the Jamestown Fort, the only people that lived there were the investors, the people that did the work, the indentured servants. I'm gonna talk, dug holes outside. So, in about 1610, the Virginia Company realized this thing might make it, but we need more settlers. So they went to the courts in London. We need more settlers. So what starts happening is a man comes into the court, the Old Bailey in London. He stole a chicken in an outside East London stand. Said, "Okay, sir, you've got two choices. You can go to jail for 50 years or transport to Virginia." 1619, they see that they needed to, this place is growing, but we need to get these settlers married because all men live there, so they can produce children. Again, the Virginia Company went to the courts, and next thing you know, the London police are rounding up all the known London prostitutes, bringing them to jail, to court. "All right, ma'am, for alleged prostitution, you got two choices. You may go to jail for 50 years, or you go to Virginia and get married." That's the truth. So the white people that came here were not the rich. They were what is called waste people. They were people that the English couldn't feed. They were vagabonds in the streets of London. They were children 8 years old who were orphans, who were put on ships and came here. That's the truth. We weren't, in my fourth grade Virginia history book, the men wearing hats, nice tailored beards, and women have these frilly things. No, never happened. Not true. If your white ancestors here before 1675, then your mother was a London prostitute and your father was a petty thief from the streets of London. That's the truth.
So it was it was something similar to how Australia was founded. It was founded as a penal colony. comics.
That's right. That's right. And you know, we haven't talked about the Native Americans yet who fed Virginia in the Great Starving Winter. You know why? Because the Great Spirit would not allow for people to go hungry. It had not been for the Native Americans, Virginia would have died in 1609. And so the English didn't know how to grow crops. Enslaved West Africans did, Native Americans did, but the English did not. You know, that's the history. That's the history. And that's we have to talk, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Exactly.
You know, that's what happened. White people came here as conquerors. They conquered the Native Americans. They stole and brought slaves. And then the first 100 years, which is historians call Anglo-America, it was still pretty white, still pretty Protestant Christian, but you did see different ethnicities start to come here. And that's exactly what the framers wanted, because they were tired of European wars, which were wars of nationalism, you know, wars of religion, things like that. And the framers were sick of that. And the only way you don't repeat the mistakes of Europe is you have guaranteed religious freedom and you have a diversity and a variety of people, because that's what produces tolerance.
And that's what Europe learned after two world wars, that you need to have tolerance, because look what happened. Almost 100 million people died.
Right. And that's what the framers wanted. They want, and they just, so it's not just enough to understand our history. We need to look at a little bit of European history, why the framers did not want to be like Europe, and welcomes this diversity of people. And we, do you know what the most diverse city in the United States is? And Rick, this shocks me. Do you know?
I'm assuming it's New York City.
Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas, out of all places.
Look it up. Look it up. Well, the oil industry, of course, there are Hispanics, there are whites, there are African, but then the oil industry has brought a lot of people. But Houston, Texas is the most diverse, ethnically diverse city in the United States. And much quicker than Texas thought, they're not going to have a white majority too much longer. It's looking like the time is very near where there'll be 33% Hispanic, 33% African American, 33% white in Texas. We lived in Texas in the late 90s. We were told that would happen by 2050, but now they're saying, oh, it's going to be at least 20 years before that. So, now the white leadership is doing what they, to keep that from happening. And then we're having a pretty serious governor's race here in Virginia. We are a blue state through and through. We've got a right-wing guy running who's a Trump guy who just, if all Democrats will get out and vote, Glenn Youngkin won't win, and we'll get Terry McAuliffe again, and that'd be great if we did that. I mean, we've gotten rid of all the Confederate statues, but Youngkin he'd put them back up. He would. So I think we need to understand, if you're in America, what the vision of the framers were, because what happened January the 6th was not what the framers wanted, and restricting voting rights is not what the framers wanted. And they expected us to do that. I'm looking what's happening with the Afghan sisters and brothers that are here. And, some of the reaction that people have here, some of it is Islamophobia, but a lot of it is a lot of uninformed white Americans look at that as, well, here more immigrants coming here, ignoring what the Afghans did, putting their lives on the line for the United States for a stupid war that lasted 20 years, you know, but we need to tell the truth of history. That's what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that would only be a beginning to eradicate Islamophobia or hostilities to other racial ethnic groups, like Hispanics, African Americans, South Asians. We have a large, where I live in Virginia Beach, a large Southeast Asian community. We have a lot of people who came here from Vietnam and Cambodia in the 1980s. There's a big Navy base here.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? They're a big boost to the economy, you know, but because Virginia Beach is not a quintessential Virginia city, we have people from all over the world. We're doing a better job of assimilating. You know, there's a Thai restaurant, a Mexican restaurant, and a Chinese restaurant, all, you know, in the same little shopping center. You see that all over the place. And
yeah, the only way education can be brought in is that it has to be part of the curriculum, and it has to be done at an early age. Like one of the things
Rick,
that I'm.
Go ahead. Let me tell you something happened to me. It all over food. Because this is what the vision I want for America. So my wife and I went to see our daughter. Our daughter lives in Hawaii, and she and her boyfriend were here in Western Massachusetts, and we went there. This was in August. And we wanted to go to a restaurant, and a lot of them were shut down because of the pandemic, but we found this restaurant. And I noticed on the menu was a Cuban sandwich, which I just love. And you know, every time I go to Cuba, you know, I get them because they're the best thing in the world. They make them just right. They make the pork slice, you know, whereas a lot of Cuban sandwiches you get in the United States, you get like minced barbecue, which is not what it's not what a real Cuban sandwich is. So in that restaurant, I had the best Cuban sandwich I have ever had. And I said to the waitress, "Oh, ma'am, can you tell whoever made this? I've eaten these Cuban sandwiches in Havana, but whoever made this, this beats any of the ones I've ever had there." And the waitress said, "Oh, come, you could tell the owner. She's actually doing the cooking tonight because we're short." So I went there to meet the person that made my awesome Cuban sandwich. I expected to see someone from Cuba. You know what I saw? I saw a South Asian woman from Korea, the owner of that restaurant, who made. So I thought, you know, that's kind of what the framers wanted, where I could go to a restaurant in Massachusetts and eat a Cuban sandwich, which is a Cuban specialty, made by a South Asian woman who owned the restaurant. That's the vision. That's, I think, the kind of tolerance that the framers wanted, where that kind of thing could happen.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I believe that unless multiculturalism or tolerance is implemented, I believe that you know, these situations of Hispanophobia and Islamophobia will get worse, because one thing is that there is freedom of speech, but freedom of speech even has its boundaries. You know, freedom of speech doesn't mean that you could incite hatred towards a group of people or promote any type of bodily harm. And I feel that, you know, the free speech clause is kind of like a gray area right now, because in many European countries or other countries that are social democracies, even something that is, you know, criticism of another group of people can be interpreted as a hate speech, and it's punished, you know, heavily. So I feel that there needs to be reinterpretations of how hate speech is conducted, because it's like, I feel that there's too many people that are protected by free speech that have done a lot of horrible things in the name of supposed freedom.
Well, let me tell you one of the things that was my crowning that in my 30 years of ministry. This kind of speaks to what you're talking about. It deals with the Cuba partnership, which I'm going to tell you about the Cuban pastor I work with. And um, and I'm going to tell you why I think what we did there could work to bridge any gap. Islamophobia, do the same thing with Muslims, or you pick the group. But uh, the church I served in Texas, we began a Presbyterian partnership with a Presbyterian church in Havana. We had gotten to know the pastor of the church. I'm not going to use his name just because, Cuba's going through some difficulties right now. And I don't want to just do that, but I'll tell you, the church was the Loyal Presbyterian Church in Havana. And my wife and I took, you have to get special permission to go, and you get permission from the Office of Foreign Assets Control in the Treasury Department in Washington. U.S. government doesn't care that we go to Cuba. They want to know how much money we're taking there. That's what it is. And in 1997, dollars were legitimate currency. But when I first went, I felt safe. Cuba was the forbidden land, but the partnership's been going for 30 years, and since that time, the folks from Austin have taken 50 trips to Havana, and the Cuban Presbyterians have taken 29 trips to Austin. And you'll appreciate this, Enrique. In those 29 trips Cubans have taken to Texas, not a single Cuban has elected to remain here. Now, U.S. law allows that. If a Cuban puts both feet on dry land here, they can stay here. But everyone has gone back home because they love their country. And it's for the good of the partnership. But the pastor I want to tell you about, he was born in Cuba. He's the same age as me. He was born in 1958. His father was a Presbyterian pastor too. But his mother was from West Virginia, which means my friend is also a U.S. citizen. Now, he could have, and his children are U.S. citizens too. They could live here, but they choose to stay in Cuba because that is their home. But he has done a lot to build bridges with Cubans and Americans. But let me tell you the biggest bridge that he has worked on is having success. He is a Cuban from Havana, and he has spent a lot of time working with Cubans in Miami, which again, Cubans, just like when I was in West Africa, I was not there for a day when I learned, first of all, that the good news is my African-American brothers and sisters have not lost the sense of what it means to be an African, and that might be the thing that might ultimately save us. But I also learned that Africans still had this hole in their beings for their sisters and brothers across the Atlantic who were stolen and taken away. And that's how Cubans in Cuba feel about Cubans in Miami. They still feel that they are our brothers and our sisters, and we love them. But my friend has used this partnership to do a lot of bridge building between the Cuban communities in Miami and the Cuban communities in Havana, the rest of Cuba, and it's working. And what did he do first? He went and visited the Cubans in Miami, got to know them, their hopes, their dreams, their ideals. And that's something we can do with any ethnic group or different religious group that we have in the United States. It's just getting to know them. Exactly. That's what it is. As equals and as who have a cultural heritage that's just as rich as any others. And so I when I see what my Cuban pastor friend does, that makes me think about, who do I need to be more attentive to? What group in the American family do I not know like I should know? And I think the newest one we're going to have are our Afghans. I think it's only important, Enrique, that we point out on this day here, you know who died this morning, don't you?
Yes, Colin Powell.
I didn't know until today that Colin Powell was a son of Jamaican immigrants. I didn't know that until today. He didn't go to an Ivy League school. He went to one of the city colleges in New York City, and he became a four-star general. And I want for these Americans, and they're white. These white Americans say want to shut the borders. Oh, come on! Look at what recent immigrants have done for the United States. Look at Colin Powell, and I mean, we could just go through, pick an ethnic group, pick a country, and you can see people who have come here, and who have given some. And why in the you don't see people lining up going to Russia, but they want to come here, and we ought to just. It's like I love going to Dearborn, Michigan. Love to go there. It's the most Muslim city in America. Now, the people that are there are third and fourth generation Americans, and Muslim Americans are the second most educated family in our American family. But the Muslims in Michigan now, they're the doctors, they're the lawyers, they're the business people, they're devout Muslims. But their great grandparents came here and as immigrants and worked very hard. Many of them worked in the emerging auto industry, and Henry Ford was racist. He was Islamophobic. He was anti-Semitic. He didn't like Hispanics. But the ancestors of the current Muslims in Dearborn, they worked hard, and didn't have much, but they just built the dream. And I think that what we need to do too is get to know the immigrant stories of, in my case, my non-white American brothers and sisters, to learn their immigration stories. Tell me about how your family got here, and even African Americans, because with genetic testing, they're learning more about where exactly they came from. But I think it's important for as people, for me to get to know your immigration story, and the immigration stories of Vietnamese people, because once we understand the story, we are a part of their life, and they're a part of their life, and we look at them differently. We look at them as our equals, and so. Yeah, critical race theory ought to be taught in schools, but I just, want to tell people, hey, if you're a Christian, go to a mosque or a synagogue. You'll be welcome, and you might be surprised what you might find. Go to a Hindu temple. Look at these doctors who you see every day on TV. Arab doctors here, the experts that are dealing with COVID. Very few of them are white. A lot of them are women, and the racial ethnicity is across the screen, and that is to be celebrated. That is to be celebrated. One of the doctors who was born here, who is of South Asian and India, she said, in this summer, I've lost 2 aunts and 4 cousins in India. It's very personal to them because their time of immigration is much more recent, but it's just telling the human story. That's all.
It's like what's happening with a lot of the Hispanics that are coming in the caravans from Central America.
That's right.
They are coming here because they're fleeing their homelands because there is instability. Like I always tell people that any group of people, doesn't matter where they're from, if they could have the same standard of living as they would have here, they wouldn't bother to immigrate here because most people rather be where they were born, with their family, with their friends, eating the foods that they eat. Most people that immigrate, move because there is political or instability, or there's a lack of opportunities. And that's what's happening with a lot of countries in Latin America because of centuries of domination by the United States, by the Monroe Doctrine, and
Yeah.
Manifest Destiny, and
Yeah.
treating Latin America as more as services, not as equals, has created disastrous consequences for many people in Latin America. And it bothers me because it's like, if Washington would have never meddled into those countries' affairs, there wouldn't be people coming here, because it's like, most people rather be where they are with their families and with their friends. And that's one of the things that I educate people with my organization, is that Hispanics are here. A lot of them have contributed a lot in the economy. We're the largest minority, but I feel that we lack the representation. Even though we are part of the economy, we don't really reap the economic benefits, nor do we reap a lot of the rewards that other minorities do, like South Asians, East Asians, other groups. And that's one thing that I'm trying to do, is to advocate for my people to have equal representation in government, that there should be hate crime clauses to be enacted to protect our people when our people are, victims of hate crimes by others, and to recognize Hispanics as a people that are part of America. They're part of the American history. They're part of the American culture. They're part of American society, and at the same time are contributors to America, because many of the right-wing propaganda that is being spewed today um, demonizes Hispanic people as takers than people than than contribute. And Hispanics, we pay a lot of taxes, but again, because of many circumstances, because of status, because of lacking the political economical power, Hispanics don't have the resources that they would have. Let me give you an example. Here in Southern California, where I live, the Asian community here is very wealthy, very prosperous, even though they are smaller. They are smaller in population compared to Hispanics. They hold a lot of economic power, and every time I go, like, to the county of San Gabriel, which is a county that is east of Glendale, where I live, all of those cities and towns, it's like a huge Chinatown, with the exception that it's a suburb. It's nice and clean and wealthy. But when you go to areas or neighborhoods in many parts of East LA, or many parts where that had always been historically been Hispanic, it's like you see that sharp contrast. It's like, and these Hispanics have been here for generations. Their parents or grandparents. A lot of Asians that came here were recent immigrants, and within a generation, they move up. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to advocate, is that
Yeah.
there are Hispanics that are educated. There are Hispanics that want to own businesses, but the problem is that they don't have the funding. They lack the resources that, for example, Asians have. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is to try to make reforms within Hispanic areas and neighborhoods, through education, through allocating funds and resources, so that way people that are gifted within the Hispanic community can stay, and at the same time they can give back to the community, because you have people that do prosper, but then they leave and then they never go back. So it's like, I can understand people looking for economic opportunities, but when you leave the community behind, you just don't do anything productive for the community. It's actually counterproductive.
I want to tell you two quick that speaks to what you're talking about. Last church I served, which I was there for 14 years, in 2009, we resettled a family, actually, they were asylees of a Muslim family from Baghdad to Virginia Beach. The husband worked for the U.S. military and on the base, and Al Qaeda found him out, burned their house, killed their dogs, and the mother and father, two little girls, came here, and I got called. They knew I'd done a lot of interfaith work. Said, "Oh, absolutely, we've got a house ready. We'll take them." So they came, and when they came, I said, "Look, I'm not here to drag you to the baptismal font. I respect the truth of your religion. This is 2009, and got a friend who's an imam of a mosque in Norfolk, and I'll take you there." Said, "Oh no, we want to go to the church." And they're devout Muslims. So I said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, we do." Well, they did, and they never missed a day. A lot of people started celebrating Ramadan with them. The wife wore a hijab, and that was fine. Well, we noticed that in time we started getting a lot of other non-white people coming. We started getting a lot of some of our Filipino sisters and brothers that are here in Virginia Beach, Hispanic people, African American, Asian, and they heard, "Oh, y'all have the Muslim family." The oldest daughter is now in her second year at Harvard. She's a brilliant young girl. But what I used to watch, how, and they wouldn't just sit Filipinos here, Hispanics here, Koreans here, they sat together. They actually, they were hearing each other's story. Which we saw here, but we weren't, there never was an American melting pot, nor do we want a melting pot. We want, again, the framers wanted variety, diversity, because that produces tolerance. But it was happening. Then I want to tell you, the last time I was in Dearborn, Michigan, was in February of 2020 before it shut down. And I was given a talk on my work of my research of enslaved West African Muslims. And after the thing was over, as people they came up, and a woman came up, and she had a hijab on, and you usually expect, if a lot of the Muslim community are born there, but a lot of us are recent immigrants. So you hear a lot of Arabic, and you hear people who talk to you in English with an Arabic accent. Well, the minute this one woman started talking to me, I thought she had an accent, but it wasn't Arabic, it was Spanish. And I said, "Oh, tell me where you're from." She said, "Well, I need to tell you that two ways. First of all, I am from Peru, and I am a full-blooded Inca Native American." I said, "Really?" And she said, "But I live in Dearborn now. I have converted to Islam, and there's a large Hispanic Muslim community in Dearborn." I didn't know this the first couple of times I went. And in my retirement, I've done a lot of research in some of the Native American religions, which are very, very, very rich, especially the Aztecs are the ones that I have looked at. But this woman from Peru, and I don't know much about the Inca system, but there were some expectations of these 12 enlightened beings, something like that. And a lot of Incas in Peru saw that in the 12 imams that the Shias recognize. And she said, "But coming to this religion, Islam, it was really nothing different from what I grew up with as an Inca." I thought that was just so awesome. I mean, because how when you meet someone, you think, something's up. I mean, I heard an accent, but it wasn't Arabic. My mind was programmed. It was, I felt like I was back in Austin. And I said, "Where are you from?" And she told me her story. But that's what's happening. And so there is a Hispanic Muslim community in Dearborn that I'm told is a vital part of the larger Islamic community in Dearborn. And
Yeah, and
so,
a lot of people don't realize that there's actually two Hispanic organizations that are Muslim, that are predominantly Muslim Hispanics. You have the Lado group, and then you have another group that's called the Alianza Islamic, or the Islamic Alliance, which is one of the oldest Hispanic Muslim organizations in the United States, which was started back in the 70s by Puerto Rican Muslim converts to Islam. I'm not sure if you are familiar with it or not.
no.
And I would say they have done a lot of good works in terms of bringing down crime, mediating between gangs, and also providing services to the community. You know, and that's something that I think is very beneficial, because when you provide services and take care of the basic needs of the people, that could do a lot of wonders. Like the other day, me and my mother, we went to an area of Los Angeles where there's a lot of homeless people that are Hispanic, and one of the things that I did is that I took bags of different canned goods, water bottles, sanitary supplies, etc. And we went directly, to all the people, and we brought these supplies. And I was doing like an intake with all these people, and a lot of them said that a lot of them got displaced because a lot of them didn't have documentation. A lot of them were displaced because of COVID. There's many different reasons. And for many of these people, Spanish United, and other organizations like myself are one of the only hopes that they have, because a lot of these people don't have access to many services because they're not citizens. A lot of them don't speak English. A lot of them don't have access to public transportation. So one of the things that we're doing with Spanish United is that we're trying to bring hope to the community, not just by taking
Right.
care of the people's physical needs, but also taking care of the people's emotional needs, and also their identity. Like one of the things that Spanish United wants to preserve is the cultural identity of Hispanics, because I feel that Hispanics are being under assault, not just from racist groups, but I feel that there are many evil forces that are trying to erase the Hispanic heritage from the United States by trying to remove statues that mention any Hispanic leaders, trying to erase the Spanish language. Like there's pressure to assimilate, to give up our language, culture, and identity in exchange for economic prosperity. So it's like I feel that Hispanics are one of the most persecuted groups in the country, and we're only one of the only groups in America that we don't have the economic or political power that other groups do. Like for example, African Americans may not have the economic power, but they have a lot of political power. Asians may not have the political power, but they have the economic power. And then you have other groups like the Jewish community, which I myself am a part of because I'm part Jewish. That even though they are a very small minority, they hold both economic and political power. Hispanics don't hold no type of power whatsoever. So Hispanics tend to get abused a lot, and you don't hear about it because a lot of the racist attacks or abuses that happen to our people, they tend to go unreported.
I think in many ways, and I don't know, have we in America going through a kind of a peaceful revolution? Or it doesn't feel peaceful right now. I mean, I celebrated the night Barack Obama was elected. Not everybody did. Not everybody did. And I mean, could the 8 years of Barack Obama have opened the door for Trump? And some people say that it did, but I am of the opinion that we are going to get these two big bills passed in the House and the Senate. I'm more hopeful now, and I think, and we got to remember, President Biden was in the U.S. Senate for 36 years. He knows how that body operates. If they had their vote 2 weeks ago, both bills would have been, well, the larger bill would have been dead in the woods. But now that people are looking at what's in there, they're saying, this is something we need. Yeah, we need infrastructure with buildings, but we also need infrastructure with people. And I think if that gets passed, you're going to see a lot of other people who have been kind of marginalized coming up. I hope I'm right. Enrique, one of the things that I more and more I tell people, in retirement, I have become very, very interested in the study of not just anthropology but genetics. And in 2000, the British and the American communities unraveled the human genome, and we find that it tells us about who we are, and that we really are one family, and that 250,000 years ago, 200 Homo sapiens ancestors left what is now East Kenya, and they populated the whole earth. We're all one family, and began in Africa. But there are things that you look around that, Central Asian Islam is the only kind of, I'm talking about in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan,
right? The Stan countries that were part of the former Soviet Union,
the Uyghurs, where they are. A lot of books say they're Sunnis. I say they're Sufis is what I think they really are. But here's the thing, it's interesting. In Central Asia, they also have another office, and it's called that of the shaman, Shaman. And the only other place I'm aware of shamans were in traditional Native American religion and, the medicine men. But if you look at what the shamans in Central Asia do and the shamans in the Native Americans, it's the same thing. And if you look at like Native American artifacts and tiles and textiles, it looks a lot like what you see in Central Asia. Well, let's remember, Native Americans came from where?
From Asia.
The East Altaic, Central Asia. That's where they came from and wandered over into Alaska 20,000 years ago. The other thing, we know that as these Homo sapiens move around, when they got to Europe, they found another group of humanoid cousins called Neanderthals. Well, the Neanderthals just disappeared. And before the study of genetics, anthropologists said, well, you know what happened. The Homo sapiens just killed all the Neanderthals. That's what human beings do to people that are different. They either discriminate against it or kill them. Well, I've had genetic tests, and you know what kind of genes I have? I have some Neanderthal genes, as do most white people of European descent. You will see in your Neanderthal genes. That says no, they weren't killed off, they merged. The Homo sapiens and the Neanderthals merged, which busts a popular myth of what a lot of white supremacists say is you just naturally hate anything that's different for you. Not true. When the first human beings, our Homo sapiens ancestors, left, they found other humanoid type people, Neanderthals. They didn't kill them, they merged. So, I don't buy it that we should hate or dislike or discriminate against that which isn't like us, doesn't look like us, doesn't sound like us. There's one race. It's called the human race, and we're all one family. And if you're an American, there is no American race. To be an American is to be committed to a sense of ideals which calls for diversity, equality, fraternity between all racial, ethnic people that are in the United States. If I could have my way, I'd wipe away borders. God didn't create them, and we don't need them. If people have, Islam has the early Muslims on a hijab. We've all been on a hijab for our whole life. The human community has. We're still moving around. Borders make no sense. Whoever wants to come here, come on. To me, it just broke my heart seeing those Haitian refugees just, as the way the Puerto Ricans were treated by Trump, throwing that, there's just no place for that. There's just no place for that.
I agree with you.
And it needs to end. There's one race, it's the human race. Perry, that's it.
I agree with you. Well, our time is up, but I wanted to congratulate you on being on my show. I learned a lot from you. You have been a very excellent guest. As soon as I finish with the podcast, I will definitely send you the link via Facebook.
That sounds great, Enrique. I'm happy to be with you again sometime.
Definitely. We'll definitely keep in touch. Have yourself a wonderful evening.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.